Her poor girl grabs a billionaire's hand and asks, "My mom is going to the Mother's Day party alone. Can you go with her and pretend to be my dad?" What happens next is surprising. The dashboard clock showed nearly 4 in the afternoon when Grant Whitaker loosened his tie. He was returning from a visit to the factory in the Northern Industrial District, a trip that should have only taken half a day, but was extended due to problems on the production line. The negotiations with the union had been tense, and his patience was wearing thin. The sky was beginning to cloud over as the car glided along the asphalt. Grant sighed, tired. At 42, soon with dark hair already slightly grey at the temples, he had achieved almost everything a man could professionally desire. At least that's what everyone said. Suddenly, the GPS made a strange sound, and the screen went black. "Great," he muttered, giving the dashboard a light tap. He was in an area he didn't know, with no idea how to get back to the main highway. The clouds now looked darker, threatening rain. He tried restarting the device a few times, as without success. His phone had GPS, but the battery was nearly dead after a day of calls and emails. He needed to save it for emergencies. By the time he realized it, he was in a clearly residential neighborhood. The houses were modest, painted in colors faded by time. Children played on the narrow sidewalks, and people were returning from work carrying grocery bags. "I'll have to stop and ask for directions," he thought, looking for some kind of business, but the neighborhood seemed to be predominantly residential, with not many shops in sight. After a few minutes of driving aimlessly, Grant noticed a lot of activity in front of a brick building. A school, he concluded, upon seeing children with colorful backpacks. Some mothers waited at the gate, others went inside with their children, carrying packages and flowers. He parked the car near the entrance and got out, adjusting the navy blue suit he was wearing. He intended to approach one of the adults milling about, but before he could take a few more steps, he felt something tug at his hand. Looking down, he saw a girl of about 5, with brown hair in pigtails and a slightly faded floral dress. She carried a backpack almost the size of her body and was watching him with curiosity. "Your car is pretty," she said, her eyes shining with admiration. "It's the prettiest one I've ever seen." Grant looked around, searching for the child's guardian, but she seemed to be alone. "Thank you," he replied, not quite sure how to proceed. He wasn't used to talking to children. The girl smiled, revealing a gap where a baby tooth was missing. "So you look important," she continued, "with that suit and that shiny car." Grant couldn't help but smile slightly. "I'm a little lost," he admitted. "My GPS broke." Then, a new idea seemed to light up her entire face. She looked toward the schoolyard, then back at Grant. When she looked at him again, there was a surprising determination in her eyes. There's a party at school today," she began, her voice now lower. "It's Mother's Day." Grant then noticed the decorations on the school gate, colorful posters with hearts, paper flowers, and banners wishing Happy Mother's Day. The women entering the school were carrying gifts. Some were accompanied by husbands, others entered alone, holding their children's hands. Before he could say goodbye, the girl took a step forward, looking directly into his eyes. Her small hands gripped the strap of her backpack tightly. "My mom is going to the Mother's Day party alone," she said suddenly, the words rushing out. "Can you go with her and pretend to be my dad?" The question hit Grant like a punch to the gut. He stood completely paralyzed, unable to form a response. I don't think," he started. But then he looked at the girl again. There was something in her eyes, a mix of hope, sadness, and courage, that completely disarmed him. It was as if a wall inside him simply crumbled. "My mom always gets sad at this party," the little one continued, her voice now almost a whisper. "The other moms have someone. She just stands in the corner by herself." "When is this party?" he asked, surprising himself. "Today, in a little bit. It's already starting." "What's your name?" he asked. "Mila," she replied, her smile returning. "Oh, and my mom is Audrey. She's pretty. You'll like her." A voice in his head told him this was crazy, walking into a school party at the invitation of a child he had just met, to pretend to be her father in front of a woman who didn't even know he existed. Grant ran a hand through his hair, undecided. His every instinct told him to get in the car and drive away. But something inside him couldn't say no to those hopeful eyes. Yes, I can. The words escaped before he could stop them. Mila's face lit up instantly. Really? You're really coming? Grant took a deep breath, straightened his tie, and nodded. Yes, I'll go. Mila gave a little jump of joy and held out her hand to him, like an official guide ready to lead the way. Then come on, let's go in. The mom's play is about to start. Grant took the small, outstretched hand and let her guide him. As they walked toward the schoolyard, he wondered what exactly he was getting himself into. The yard was transformed. Red hearts hung from the ceiling, paper roses decorated the walls, and colorful banners with affectionate messages crossed the space. Tables arranged in a circle offered cakes, pies, and juice. In the center, a small makeshift stage had been set up, with curtains decorated with paper flowers. All around, mothers and children mingled, some accompanied by fathers, uncles, or grandfathers. The children ran around excitedly, many holding small gifts wrapped in colorful paper. The teachers, wearing name tags with hearts, were guiding the families through the program. There! Exclaimed Mila, pointing to a woman arranging flowers in vases on a long table. Grant saw her immediately. Brown hair tied in a simple bun, a light blue dress, delicate movements as she worked. As they approached, Mila let go of his hand and ran to her mother. Mommy, I brought a surprise! Audrey turned, smiling at her daughter, but her smile froze when she saw Grant standing a few steps away. The confusion on her face was evident. Mila, who is... she began, but the girl was already making the introductions. This is my daddy. He came back for the party. Isn't that great? Time seemed to freeze. Grant felt the blood drain from his face. Audrey stood completely still, her wide eyes fixed on him. What? She murmured, so quietly that only Grant could hear. I'm sorry, he began, taking a step forward. There's been a misunderstanding. I'm Grant Whitaker. I was lost. I stopped to ask for directions, and your daughter... Well, Audrey looked from her daughter to him, her face a mixture of confusion and suspicion. Mila, she said, her voice controlled. Why did you say this man is your father? The girl hugged her mother's waist, looking up with an expression that mixed guilt and hope. I just didn't want you to be alone at the party, she explained, her voice small. All the other mums have someone. You always look sad when you look at them. The child's words seemed to hit Audrey deeply. Her face softened, the indignation giving way to a more complex emotion. She knelt, bringing herself to her daughter's eye level. Mila, sweetie, we can't just ask strangers to pretend to be your dad, she explained gently. Ah, that's not right. But I see you when you look away and sigh, Mila insisted, her eyes filling with tears. I just wanted to make you happy today. Audrey hugged her daughter tightly, hiding her own face for a moment. When she stood up again, there was a moist shine in her eyes, but she was smiling at Grant. Sorry for the inconvenience, she said, extending her hand. Audrey Collins, and you've already met my daughter, the little generator of awkward situations. Grant shook her extended hand. Grant Whitaker, and really, I was lost. My GPS broke and I stopped to ask for directions. And now you're stuck at a Mother's Day school party, Audrey completed, a slight smile now playing on her lips. I'm sorry about that. Don't be, he replied, surprising himself with the sincerity in his voice. It's nice to be here. A bell rang, drawing everyone's attention. The principal, a middle-aged woman in a floral dress, stepped onto the small stage. Dear mothers and family members, welcome to our Mother's Day celebration. The children have prepared special performances for you. Please, find your seats. Mila grabbed Grant's and her mother's hands, pulling them toward the chairs arranged in front of the stage. Come on, I'm dancing in the third song. They sat down, Mila in the middle, swinging her legs with excitement. Grant observed the families around them. Fathers had their arms around their wives' shoulders. Grandmothers took pictures with their phones. Single mothers like Audrey exchanged knowing smiles with each other. The lights dimmed and the curtains opened. A group of small children dressed as flowers appeared, reciting a poem about mothers. The childish voices, some off-key, filled the room with an almost palpable sweetness. Look, whispered Mila, pointing to a girl dressed as a sunflower. That's my friend Zoe, Audrey smiled, the pride visible on her face. She looks beautiful. Grant felt strangely comfortable in this setting, so different from his usual world. The performances continued. Songs, poems, a short play. Each child eagerly searched the audience for the faces of their families, seeking approval and admiration. When it was Mila's turn, she went on stage with 5 other children. They wore colorful sashes and held paper hearts. The music started, and they performed a simple dance, twirling and raising their arms in imperfect synchrony. Grant found himself smiling without realizing it. Mila shone on stage, her movements full of pure joy. At one point, she looked directly at them and waved, and radiant. Audrey waved back, and Grant, without thinking, did the same. After the performances, there was a potluck snack time. Mothers had brought homemade dishes, which now covered the long tables. Children ran between the adults, excited by the temporary freedom. "You must be wanting to leave," Audrey said, as Mila ran to get a piece of cake. "We've taken up too much of your time." "Actually, I'm enjoying it," Grant replied, surprising them both. "It's different from my day-to-day." "I can imagine," she smiled, glancing at his expensive suit. A teacher approached, carrying small packages. "Audrey, the party favors for the mums turned out beautifully. Thanks for the help." "It was nothing, Susan. I'm happy to help." The teacher walked away, and Grant noticed something in Audrey's gaze, a glint of satisfaction, of belonging. This was her community, he realized, a place where she was valued not for what she had, but for what she gave. Mila came running back, her mouth smudged with chocolate, her eyes shining with happiness. "Did you see? I danced perfectly. I didn't make a single mistake." "We saw, sweetie." Audrey wiped the corner of her daughter's mouth with a napkin. "You were perfect." "Did you think so too, Uncle Grant?" The title caught him by surprise, but somehow it sounded right. It wasn't a lie, like Dad would be, but still affectionate. "I thought it was amazing," he answered honestly. "Oh, you have a lot of talent." The smile Mila gave in return was like a small sun, lighting up her entire face. The party went on for another hour. Grant found himself talking to other mothers and fathers, exchanging smiles with teachers, and even helping to serve juice when the cups ran out. It was a different world from his, simpler, more direct, more human. When it was finally time to go, Mila looked exhausted but radiant. She was holding a handmade card and a small plant in a decorated pot. "A gift for the best mom in the world," she explained, showing the plant to Grant. "I painted the pot myself." At the school gate, Audrey turned to him, the initial embarrassment replaced by something softer, more genuine. "Thank you for staying," she said. It meant a lot to Mila. "And for you?" The question slipped out before he could think. Audrey smiled, a smile that reached her eyes. "Also, it was nice not to be alone today." Mila, holding her mother's hand, extended the other to Grant. "Thank you for pretending to be my dad," she said with the brutal sincerity of children. Say it was the best Mother's Day. Grant felt something tighten in his chest, not painfully, but like an awakening. The pleasure was all mine, Mila. As he watched them walk away toward the bus stop, Grant realized that, for a few hours, he had been part of something real, something all his money and power had never provided. And surprisingly, he didn't want it to end. The elevator door opened silently, revealing the private foyer that led to Grant's apartment. His Italian shoes echoed on the marble floor as he walked to the entrance. A soft light turned on automatically as he approached, one of the many smart systems that controlled his home. As he turned the key in the lock, Grant was greeted only by silence. There was no one waiting for him, no voice asking how his day had been. The apartment was exactly as he had left it in the morning, impeccable, organized, and completely empty. He tossed the keys on the coffee table and loosened his tie, finally freeing himself from the knot that seemed to have been choking him all day. The clock read almost 9 at night. The video conference he had missed resulted in a flood of angry emails, which he had hastily answered from the car, making up an excuse about technical difficulties. Grant went to the designer kitchen, all in shades of gray and black. He opened the refrigerator and stared inside for a few seconds, not really seeing what was there. He wasn't hungry. He closed the door and opted for a glass of wine, an award-winning Cabernet he had bought on his last trip. As the ruby liquid slid into the glass, his mind drifted back to the unexpected afternoon he had just experienced. Mila's face appeared vividly in his memory, that smile with the gap between her teeth, the genuine excitement in her eyes as she danced on the school stage. And Audrey, with her look of gratitude when he stayed until the end of the party. "Thank you for staying," she had said. It meant a lot to Mila. Grant brought the glass to the spacious living room and sat on the leather sofa, looking through the floor-to-ceiling windows that revealed the illuminated city below. From up high, it looked like a carpet of sparkling jewels. He should have been admiring the view, appreciating everything he had accomplished to earn such a sight. Instead, his thoughts were fixed on a small schoolyard decorated with paper hearts. The silence of the apartment now seemed deafening. There were no children's laughs, no conversations, no noise from other people, just the distant hum of the air conditioning and the occasional clink of ice cubes in his glass. Grant walked over to a discreet bookshelf where he kept some of the few personal items he owned. Among business books and corporate awards, there was a single framed photo, him at 10 between his parents in front of a modest house, the last picture they took together before the divorce. His father had left 2 weeks later. "I'm going to find a better life for us," he promised. Letters came for a few months, then occasional calls, until silence settled in for good. Grant grew up watching his mother work 2 jobs, coming home exhausted every night, often falling asleep on the sofa without even the energy to make it to her room. She died of cancer when Grant was in college. She worked until the last month, refusing to accept help, even when he got a part-time job to help with the bills. "Focus on your studies," she insisted. "So that will give you a future I can't." Grant took another sip of wine, his throat tightening with the memories. His father reappeared at the funeral, older, more worn by time, full of excuses and regrets. Too late. Grant listened to him in silence, accepted the awkward hug and never answered his calls after that. 3 years later, he learned from a lawyer that he had also passed away. Now at 42, Grant had built exactly the kind of life his mother had dreamed for him: financial security, professional recognition, a luxurious apartment in the best neighborhood in the city, and complete loneliness. Mila's smile came back to his mind, the way she looked at her mother with absolute adoration, the way Audrey, even clearly tired after a long day of work, still found the energy to smile, to hug, to be fully present for her daughter. Grant stood up and walked to the window. Down below, small points of light moved, cars taking people home to their families, to places where they were expected, where they were missed. The truth hit him as never before. No one would miss him if he didn't come home today. There wasn't a single person in the entire world who was waiting for him, worried about his well-being, eager for his company. He had built an entire life focused on never again going through the financial hardships his mother had faced. Every decision, every sacrifice, every extra hour at the office, all to ensure he would never depend on anyone again, never be abandoned again, and in the process, he hadn't allowed anyone to get close enough to care. The phone vibrated on the table. It was his assistant, sending the updated schedule for the next day. 3 meetings in the morning, a lunch with investors, a video conference with the Singapore branch at night due to the time difference. The perfect routine of a successful man. Grant put the phone aside without replying. He finished his wine and poured himself another glass. For a moment, he imagined what it would be like to come home and find someone waiting. Someone who would ask about his day, share dinner, bring life to these empty walls. Mila's words echoed in his mind. "Can you go with her and pretend to be my dad?" Such a simple, direct question. And for a few hours, he had experienced a glimpse of a different life. Not as a father, of course, that would be absurd, but as someone who mattered to other people, someone whose presence made a difference. Grant placed the empty glass on the table and sat down again. The silence seemed to press on his ears, as if it were getting denser, heavier with each passing minute. His mother used to say that silence could be a friend or an enemy, depending on what was in your heart. And when you're at peace with yourself, silence is comforting, she would explain. When you're not, it screams louder than any noise. That night, the silence screamed. It screamed about choices made, paths not taken, connections avoided. It screamed about a life built around material security, but empty of meaningful relationships. Grant picked up the remote and turned on the television, just for some background noise. A news anchor was talking about the global economy, corporate mergers, the stock market, the world he lived and breathed every day. But the words seemed distant, disconnected from the feeling that now filled his chest. The images of Mila and Audrey kept coming back. The genuine gratitude in their eyes, the simplicity of their thanks. The way that, for a few hours, he had felt something different, something he couldn't name, but that left an even bigger void when it was over. The silence surrounding him now was not just the absence of sound, it was the absence of purpose beyond work, the absence of true connection, the absence of someone to share both the triumphs and the defeats with. Grant turned off the television. The silence returned, heavier than before, and for the first time in many years, he allowed himself to feel how much that silence hurt. Grant couldn't concentrate on work all morning. Sitting in his spacious office overlooking the city, he read and reread the same report without absorbing a single word. The spreadsheets on the computer screen were a blur of meaningless numbers. His mind kept going back to the schoolyard, to Mila's smile, to Audrey's grateful look. "Mr. Whitaker, is everything all right?" The voice of Caroline, his assistant, brought him back to reality. She was standing at the door, holding a folder of documents with a worried expression. "Yes, Caroline, just thinking. You seem distant today, sir. Can I get you some coffee?" Grant glanced at the clock, almost 3 in the afternoon. Mila's school should be ending around 4 Chuan if it was like most schools. "No, thank you. Actually, I'm going to leave early today, cancel my last meeting." Caroline looked surprised. Grant never left before 8, but simply nodded. "Should I give a specific reason?" "Say an unavoidable personal commitment came up." 20 minutes later, Grant was driving through the city streets, aware that he was doing something completely out of his routine. He had memorized the way back to that simple neighborhood without needing the GPS. Part of him questioned what he was doing, what madness this was. Another part, however, felt a strange urgency, as if he were answering a call he didn't even know existed. He parked a block from the school, just as he had the day before. Wearing a more casual suit today, he got out of the car and walked to the gate, feeling strangely nervous. "What am I doing here?" he asked himself for the 10th time. There was no party today, no excuse for his presence, just an inexplicable need to see that child again, to check if she was okay. He stood a few feet from the entrance, watching. Children began to leave in small groups, some accompanied by adults, others apparently allowed to go home alone. Teachers supervised the dismissal, saying goodbye with smiles and waves. That's when he saw her. Mila came out of the building, carrying the same backpack that was disproportionate to her size, her school uniform slightly too big for her small frame. She seemed to be looking for someone, probably her mother. Then her gaze met Grant's. For a moment, she seemed not to believe what she was seeing. Then, her face lit up with a smile that made something inside Grant stir. "You came back," Mila exclaimed, running toward him with an excitement that drew curious glances. Grant felt momentarily uncomfortable with the attention, but the girl's smile was too contagious to care. "I was passing by and thought I'd say hello," he lied, trying to sound casual. Mila stopped in front of him, breathless from the run, her big eyes studying his face as if trying to solve a mystery. "Did you come to pick me up? Mommy only gets here later. She's working." Grant hesitated. He hadn't planned for this. In fact, he hadn't planned for anything beyond seeing her again. "Not exactly. I just wanted to know how you were after the party yesterday." "It was the best party," she exclaimed, bouncing slightly. "Everyone liked our dance, and the teacher said I did great, and Mommy loved the pot I painted." Her excitement was infectious. Grant found himself smiling without realizing it. "Where does your mother work?" he asked, genuinely curious. Mila's smile faded a little. "She cleans houses and offices. Today she's in a big building downtown. She's a cleaner." There was a disarming simplicity in the way Mila spoke, without shame or embarrassment, just stating a fact. "And she picks you up afterwards?" Mila shook her head. "No, I wait at Mrs." Beth's house. She pointed to an elderly woman watching over some children. Mommy picks me up there when she finishes work, sometimes really late. Grant nodded, absorbing the information. I see. And you like staying at Mrs. Beth's house? The girl shrugged. It's okay, she's nice, but the house smells like medicine and she sleeps a lot. Sometimes I get hungry because she forgets to make dinner. Grant's heart ached at that sincere confession. And your mom? Doesn't she leave a snack for you? Mila fiddled with her backpack strap, suddenly interested in her own shoes. Sometimes. But yesterday there was nothing at home to bring. Mommy said she'll buy food when she gets paid on Friday. Grant felt as if something heavy had settled in his chest. The girl talked about going hungry with the same nonchalance she talked about school. Did she manage to send a snack today? He asked, trying to keep his voice neutral. Mila shook her head. No, we're out of everything. But it's okay, Mrs. Beth probably has crackers. A teacher approached, looking at Grant with suspicion. Hello, Mila. Is this gentleman your relative? Before Grant could explain, Mila answered with conviction. It's Uncle Grant. He came to the party yesterday. My mom knows him. The teacher looked at Grant, still wary. Are you authorized to pick Mila up? No, I'm not, he answered honestly. I just stopped by to say hello. She's going with Mrs. Beth, as usual. The mention of the known caregiver seemed to reassure the teacher, who nodded. I see. Well, Mila, Mrs. Beth is waiting. You'd better not be late. I'm coming, teacher, Mila replied, but made no move to leave. When the teacher walked away, she looked at Grant with a suddenly serious expression. Are you coming back tomorrow too? The question caught Grant off guard. He hadn't thought about it. Part of him knew he should say no, end this strange connection before it became more complicated. But another part, the same part that had brought him here, couldn't resist the hope in her eyes. Maybe, he replied cautiously. If I can get out of work early. Mila's face lit up again. I hope you can. Tomorrow I have math. It's my favorite. The elderly woman called from the gate. Mila, let's go, dear. It's getting late. I have to go, the girl said, already backing away. Then she stopped and, in a sudden movement, hugged Grant's waist. It was so quick he barely had time to register it, a light, almost ghostly touch before she ran off. Bye, Uncle Grant. Grant stood still, watching as she ran to the elderly woman, and the two walked away down the sidewalk. Something inside him had shifted, as if a long-closed door had been thrown wide open. Over the next 3 days, Grant rearranged his meetings, delegated tasks, and left the office at the same time, always meeting Mila at the school gate. The girl was already waiting for him with a smile, as if she were absolutely certain he would come. In their quick chats before she left with Mrs. Beth, Grant learned more about her life. Her mother worked at 3 different places during the week. They lived in a small one-bedroom apartment, where Mila slept in the bed and Audrey on a mattress on the floor. They didn't have a television, but her mother always got books for her from the public library. Sometimes, when the money ran out before the end of the month, they had only bread and butter for dinner or drank tea to trick their tummies, as Mila explained matter-of-factly. On the 4th day, Grant arrived earlier. He stopped at a delicatessen on the way and bought fresh sandwiches, fruit, juice, and some sweets. He put everything in a plain paper bag, without the logo of the expensive store. When Mila spotted him at the gate, she ran as usual, but stopped, curious, when she saw the bag. What's that? She asked, pointing. A snack, Grant replied, handing the bag to her. I thought you might be hungry today. Mila's eyes widened. She opened the bag and peeked inside, her expression changing from curiosity to astonishment, then to joy. Is this for me? That's great. Mommy didn't send anything today because there was no food at home, she said, her voice overflowing with genuine gratitude, as if Grant had given her the most precious gift in the world. Grant felt a lump in his throat. A 5-year-old child shouldn't be so grateful for a simple snack. A child shouldn't know what it's like to have no food at home. There's plenty in there, he said, trying to control the emotion in his voice. You can share with Mrs. Beth if you want. Mila shook her head, holding the bag like a treasure. I'm going to save it to share with Mommy. She comes home so tired from work. That response only made the lump in Grant's throat grow larger. A child who thought to save food for her mother when she was clearly hungry herself. Just then, Mrs. Beth approached. She was an elderly woman with white hair and a slightly stooped walk with a kind though tired expression. Hello, she greeted, looking at Grant with curiosity. You must be the uncle Mila won't stop talking about. Grant extended his hand. Grant Whitaker. I met Mila and her mother at the school party. The old woman nodded, shaking his hand. Beth Oliveira. I look after Mila when Audrey is working, which is almost always, poor thing. She lowered her voice. Hey, it's good to see Mila so excited. That girl deserves more joy in her life. Grant agreed silently. Mrs. Beth looked at the bag Mila was holding. What's in there, dear? Uncle Grant brought a snack, Mila exclaimed, showing the contents. There's a sandwich and juice and even chocolate. The woman gave Grant a grateful look. How kind. My pantry is almost empty today. You know how it is, end of the month. This will help a lot. Grant felt a pang of guilt. He had never had to worry about empty pantries or the end of the month. As Mrs. Beth talked about how her pension barely covered her medication, he thought about how many people like her and Audrey lived invisibly in the eyes of people like him. Fight we have to go, Mrs. Beth said finally. Mila, thank your uncle. Thank you, Uncle Grant, the girl smiled, that smile he now eagerly awaited to see every day. You're welcome, Mila. See you tomorrow. She nodded energetically. Tomorrow is Friday. Mommy gets paid and we're going grocery shopping. As he watched the two walk away, Grant made a decision. He took out his phone and called his assistant. Caroline, I need you to do some research for me. I want information on food assistance programs for schools in low-income neighborhoods and also on scholarships for low-income children. A new company project, sir? Caroline asked him, surprised. Grant hesitated. No. A personal project. After hanging up, he returned to his car, but didn't go home or to the office. Instead, he drove to a large supermarket. As he walked through the aisles, filling his cart with non-perishable food, fruit, hygiene products, and school supplies, he thought about how his life had changed in just 5 days. Before his concerns revolved around quarterly reports, stock quotes, and market strategies. Now, he couldn't stop thinking about a 5-year-old girl who saved food for her tired mother. An elderly woman with an empty pantry, a woman who cleaned all day and could barely feed her daughter. At the checkout, when the cashier asked if he wanted the receipt for his records, Grant hesitated. The purchase was too large to seem casual, but too small to raise much suspicion. He opted not to, paid in cash, and took everything to the trunk of his car. Tomorrow would be Friday, the day Audrey got paid. The day there would finally be food in their house. For how long, he didn't know. What he did know was that he would return to the school gate, and the day after, and the day after that, and that the paper bag with sandwiches was just the beginning. As he drove back to his silent apartment, Grant thought about the irony. He had built an entire career aimed at the financial security his mother never had. He had accumulated wealth, power, status, and now, for the first time, he felt he might have found a purpose for it all in a place he never would have imagined, through an unexpected request from a child he hadn't known a week ago. The lump in his throat was still there, but now it was accompanied by a different feeling, something that felt strangely like hope. The week passed quickly. Grant's daily ritual transformed. Now, instead of staying at the office late, he rearranged his schedule to be at the school gate at 4 in the afternoon. Caroline, his assistant, no longer questioned his early departures, though her curious gaze followed him as he left the building carrying small packages. Every day, Grant brought something different for Mila. On Monday, it was fresh fruit. On Tuesday, a children's storybook she mentioned loving at the library. On Wednesday, a small set of colored pencils. On Thursday, a thermal lunchbox with colorful compartments. Simple gifts, nothing ostentatious, nothing that would draw too much attention. Mila received everything with the same genuine joy, her eyes shining as if each small item were a priceless treasure. More than once, Grant had to swallow his emotions seeing her marvel at things most children would consider mundane. During these brief encounters, before Mrs. Beth took her, Grant pieced together the puzzle of Mila and Audrey's life. He found out that Audrey worked as a cleaner in 3 different locations, a commercial building downtown on Mondays and Tuesdays, a residential complex on Wednesdays and Thursdays, and private homes on Fridays and occasionally Saturdays. She got up at 5 every morning to get Mila ready for school and often returned only after 9 at night, exhausted. On Friday, Grant arrived earlier than usual. He had carefully planned this moment. In the trunk of his car, a large package waited, wrapped in plain paper. He waited until most of the children had left and then spotted Mila chatting excitedly with a classmate. When she saw him, as always, her face lit up and she ran toward him. "Uncle Grant, you came again," she exclaimed, stopping in front of him, breathless from the run. "I promised I would, didn't I?" he replied, smiling. In recent days, he realized he smiled more than he had in the last few years combined. Mila nodded happily. Grant noticed her uniform was clean, but visibly worn. The sleeves were too short. The skirt showed signs of having been adjusted several times to keep up with her growth. The sneakers, a white that had long since turned yellowish, had worn-out soles and a small hole on the side. "I have something for you today," Grant said, "but it's in my car. It's a bit big to bring all the way here." Mila's eyes widened. "Big? What is it?" "A surprise." "Shall we go get it?" Mila hesitated, looking toward the gate where Mrs. Beth usually waited for her. "Mrs. Beth," Grant followed her gaze. "I don't think she's here yet. We can wait for her if you prefer." The girl bit her lip, thoughtful. "Sometimes she's late when she has to go to the doctor. Then Mommy said I should wait with Miss Sandra." Just then, the teacher Grant now knew by sight approached. "Hello, Mila?" "Mrs. Beth called to say she's at the doctor today. Your mother will be picking you up." "My mum?" Mila seemed surprised and happy. "She can never pick me up on Fridays." The teacher smiled gently. "It seems she managed to leave early today." Then, noticing Grant, she added, "Hello, Mr. Grant Whitaker." "I'm a friend of the family," he replied, extending his hand. The teacher greeted him. "Sandra Peters. Mila talks a lot about the uncle who brings presents." There was a slight tone of curiosity in her voice, perhaps even suspicion, but her smile remained friendly. "Good things, I hope," Grant replied, slightly uncomfortable. "The best. In fact, she drew a picture of you in art class yesterday." Mila suddenly seemed shy. "It was a surprise, Miss Peters," Sandra laughed. "Sorry, sweetie. Your secret is safe with me." The teacher moved away to attend to other parents, and Mila looked at Grant with anticipation. "Can we go see the surprise?" "Of course. We'll wait for your mother here at the gate, but we can get the surprise in the meantime." They walked to the car parked a few feet away. Grant opened the trunk and took out the large package. It wasn't overly heavy, but it was bulky. "What is it?" asked Mila, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Open it and find out," Grant replied, placing the package on the ground so she could reach it. With nimble, eager fingers, Mila began to tear the paper. First, a box of new sneakers appeared, white with small pink details. Next, a complete school uniform, exactly like the one she was wearing, but new and in the right size. Finally, a navy blue backpack with colorful details filled with school supplies, notebooks, pencils, erasers, rulers, everything a child could need. Mila stood completely still, looking at the items with an expression Grant couldn't decipher. For a moment, he feared he had gone too far, crossed some invisible line. "If you don't like them, we can exchange them," he said, uncertain. Mila finally looked up at him, and Grant saw her eyes were filled with tears. "Thank you. My things were old, but Mommy didn't have money to buy new ones." Her voice was almost a whisper. Something inside Grant tightened. He knelt down to her level. "Hey, no need to cry. Everyone deserves new things once in a while." Mila nodded, wiping her eyes with her hand. "The backpack is the prettiest I've ever seen. And the sneakers, too." She touched each item with reverence, as if they were made of gold. "Can I really keep all of this?" "Of course you can. It's all yours." The girl smiled through her tears. Then, in a sudden movement, she threw her arms around Grant's neck, hugging him tightly. "Thank you, Uncle Grant. You're the nicest person in the world." Grant felt a lump in his throat. He awkwardly returned the hug, noticing how small and fragile she was in his arms. How could a child be so moved by such basic things? Things that every child should have as a right, not a privilege. Mila. A female voice interrupted them. Grant stood up and saw Audrey approaching quickly. She looked tired, with visible dark circles under her eyes, but her face lit up when she saw her daughter. Then, her eyes landed on Grant, and her expression changed to surprise, then confusion. "Mr. Whitaker, what are you doing here?" Before Grant could answer, Mila ran to her mother, dragging the new backpack. "Mommy, look what Uncle Grant gave me." New sneakers and a uniform and a backpack full of stuff. Audrey looked at the gifts, then at Grant, a shadow crossing her face. "Mila, sweetie, can you go over there with Miss Sandra for a minute? I need to talk to Uncle Grant." Mila hesitated, seeming to sense the tension. "But Mommy, just a minute, honey." "Please." Reluctantly, Mila took the backpack and walked over to the teacher, looking back several times. As soon as the girl was out of earshot, Audrey turned to Grant, her eyes now hard. "What is the meaning of this? Why are you giving expensive gifts to my daughter?" Grant hadn't anticipated this reaction. "Joyce, they're not expensive, they are to me," Audrey interrupted. "I don't know what's going on here, but I don't need charity." The word charity hit him like a slap. "It's not charity. I just wanted to—" "What? What exactly does a businessman who's never seen us before the party want with a 5-year-old girl?" There was genuine concern in her voice, beyond the indignation. "I've seen you here every day. Miss Sandra told me. You've been showing up with gifts, snacks." "It's not what you're thinking," Grant hurried to say. I enjoy her company." "Mila is a special kid." Audrey crossed her arms. "I don't understand. What do you want?" The question hung between them, direct and challenging. Grant realized he didn't have a simple answer. What did he want? Why was he here every day, bringing gifts, talking to a child he barely knew? "I can explain," he said finally, "but not here. Maybe we can talk somewhere more private." Audrey studied him for a long moment, as if assessing the threat. Finally, her shoulders slumped slightly. "All right, we can go to my place. It's not far from here. We can walk." Grant nodded, relieved. "I'll park the car properly and meet you." 10 minutes later, they were walking through the narrow streets of the neighborhood. Mila walked ahead, skipping and proudly showing off her new backpack to anyone who would look. Audrey and Grant followed in uncomfortable silence. "She seems happy," Grant commented, trying to break the ice. Audrey looked at her daughter, and her face softened. Yes, she always wanted a backpack like that. She saw it in an ad in a magazine in the dentist's waiting room. "I'm sorry if I overstepped," Grant said. "It wasn't my intention to offend you," Audrey sighed. "You didn't offend me. You just worried me. Mila gets attached to people easily, and I don't want her to be disappointed when you get tired of this, whatever this is." Her frankness caught him off guard. "I don't plan on disappearing," he replied, surprised by his own certainty. "People always disappear, Mr. Whitaker, especially people from worlds different from ours." Before he could respond, Mila called out from a small 3-story walk-up building. "We're here, Mummy. Let's go show my new presents to my dolls." They climbed 2 flights of stairs to a narrow hallway where several doors lined up. Audrey opened the 3rd door, revealing a small but impeccably clean and organized apartment. The living room and kitchen formed a single space. A small worn sofa occupied one wall, in front of a low coffee table. In the opposite corner, a 2-burner stove, a tiny sink, and an old refrigerator made up the kitchen. A half-open door showed a bedroom where Grant could glimpse a single bed with a colorful quilt, obviously Mila's space. "It's not much, but it's our home," Audrey said, noticing his gaze. There was a challenge in her voice, as if expecting judgment. "It's cozy," Grant replied honestly. "You keep it very well." Mila ran to the bedroom with her new treasures, leaving the adults in the living room. "Can I offer you a glass of water?" Audrey asked, heading to the kitchen. "I don't have anything else. We're out of food. Today is grocery day." Grant felt a pang in his chest. "Water is great, thank you." While Audrey filled a glass, Grant observed the apartment more closely. There was no television, but a small makeshift bookshelf held children's books. On the walls, Mila's drawings were carefully taped up, creating a colorful and lively gallery. "She likes to draw," he commented, pointing to the childish works of art. Audrey smiled, handing him the glass of water. "It's her favorite hobby. I always say she'll be a great artist one day." They sat on the small sofa, maintaining a respectful distance. From the bedroom came the sounds of Mila talking to her dolls, excitedly showing them her new belongings. "So," Audrey began, "are you going to tell me what's going on? Why is a man like you so interested in my daughter?" Grant swirled the glass between his hands, searching for the right words. "Meeting Mila. And you." It stirred something in me I didn't expect. "I've been thinking a lot since that party. About my life, my choices." Audrey watched him attentively without interrupting. "I used to live in a neighborhood like this too," Grant confessed, the words coming out more easily than he imagined. "I wasn't always rich. My mother raised me alone, working 2 jobs. Sometimes we didn't have food at the end of the month either." Audrey's eyes widened slightly, her surprise evident. "I built my entire life trying to escape that reality," he continued. "I worked hard, studied, did everything I could to never be in need again. And I succeeded. I have more money than I ever dreamed of. But I also have an empty life, with no one who really cares if I come home or not." Grant paused, surprised by his own honesty. "Meeting Mila, it made me remember things I had buried a long time ago. The simplicity, the genuine joy in small things, and it made me want to help because I know exactly what it's like to be on the other side." A silence settled between them, filled only by the distant sounds of Mila playing. "Why my daughter?" Audrey asked finally, her voice softer now. "Why us?" Grant gave a small smile. "Because she approached me that day. Because she had the courage to ask a stranger for help when she saw her mother in need. Because she made me feel something I thought was dead. Her company does me good." Audrey studied him for a long moment, as if trying to see beyond the words. "I'm not used to people offering help without wanting something in return." "I understand your suspicion," Grant replied. "In your shoes, I'd probably feel the same way." Just then, Mila returned to the room carrying a rag doll with handmade clothes. "Look, Uncle Grant, this is Lily. She got a new uniform too." The girl proudly showed a small piece of fabric she had tied around the doll, mimicking a school uniform. Grant smiled, genuinely touched. "It looks very nice, Mila. You're very creative." Audrey watched the interaction, her face a mix of emotions. When Mila went back to the bedroom to continue playing, she turned to Grant. "I don't know if this is a good idea," she said honestly. "I'm afraid Mila will get too attached and then get hurt." "I understand your concern," Grant replied, "but I promise I'm not here on a whim. I'm not just going to disappear." Audrey sighed. "We'll see. For now, thank you for the gifts. I know she needed them, and I couldn't give them to her right now." The vulnerability in that admission touched Grant deeply. "You don't have to thank me. It was a pleasure to see her joy." A more comfortable silence settled between them. From the bedroom came the sounds of Mila's excited voice, making up stories for her dolls, stories that now included an Uncle Grant, who brought magical gifts. And sitting on that worn-out sofa in a small and simple apartment, Grant felt more at home than in his luxurious penthouse apartment. 3 days passed since Grant's visit to Audrey and Mila's apartment. In that short time, something had subtly shifted in their dynamic. Audrey's initial suspicions, though not entirely gone, had given way to a cautious acceptance of Grant's presence in their lives. On Thursday afternoon, Grant drove to the school at the usual time, eager to see Mila. In recent days, it had become part of his routine to wait for her at dismissal, talk about her day, and occasionally walk her home, always respecting the boundaries Audrey had set. Upon arriving at the school gate, however, Grant noticed something different. Miss Sandra, who now recognized him, approached him with a concerned expression. "Mr. Whitaker, I'm glad you're here," she said. "Mila didn't come to class today." Grant felt a pang of concern. "Is she sick?" "I'm not sure. We didn't receive any notice. I tried calling her mother, but I couldn't get through. This isn't like her. Audrey always lets us know when Mila can't come." Grant's concern grew. "I see. I'll stop by their apartment to check." Thank you for letting me know. 20 minutes later, Grant was hurrying up the stairs of the small building. He knocked on the apartment door, but there was no immediate answer. He was about to knock again when he heard shuffling footsteps approaching. The door opened to reveal Audrey, looking exhausted. Her hair was disheveled. Deep dark circles marked her face, and her eyes were red as if she had been crying. "Grant," she asked, clearly surprised. "What are you doing here?" "Miss Sandra told me Mila didn't go to school today. I was worried." Audrey ran a hand through her hair, a gesture of pure exhaustion. "Mila's sick. High fever since last night." The door opened wider, and Grant could see the small living room. On the worn-out sofa, wrapped in a thin blanket, was Mila. Her usually rosy face was pale, except for cheeks flushed with fever. Even from where he stood, Grant could see the sweat on her forehead and how her breathing seemed a bit labored. "May I come in?" he asked, his concern evident in his voice. Audrey hesitated for only a second before opening the door wider. "Of course," Grant entered and approached the sofa. Mila opened her eyes at the sound of his footsteps, and a small, weak smile appeared on her feverish face. "Uncle Grant," she murmured, her voice hoarse. "You came to visit me." He knelt beside the sofa, feeling the heat radiating from the little girl. "Hey, little one, you're not feeling well, are you?" Mila shook her head. "My throat hurts, and I'm cold, even under the blanket." Grant looked at Audrey, who remained standing, her arms crossed as if trying to protect herself. "How long has she been like this?" "It started last night," Audrey replied. "I thought it was just a cold, but the fever kept rising. I gave her the fever reducer I had at home, but it doesn't seem to be helping much." Grant gently touched Mila's forehead. It was far too warm. "Have you seen a doctor?" A flash of anguish crossed Audrey's face. I couldn't take her. My boss said if I missed today, I'd lose my job. I asked Mrs. Beth to stay with her, but she's also sick this week." Grant understood the impossible dilemma. A single mother having to choose between caring for her sick daughter or keeping the job that paid the bills. It was a choice no one should ever have to make. "We're taking her to the hospital now," he said decisively. Audrey bit her lip, clearly distressed. "I can't afford a doctor. The neighborhood clinic is under renovation, and the next closest one has a waiting list of hours." "It doesn't matter," Grant interrupted gently. "The most important thing is to take care of her. I know a good children's hospital 20 minutes from here. We can go in my car." For a moment, Grant thought she would refuse. Audrey's pride and independence were traits he had already noticed and admired. But then Mila coughed, a harsh sound that seemed to hurt her small throat, and Audrey's expression changed. "Okay," she agreed, her worry overriding any other consideration. "Let me just grab a few things." While Audrey gathered documents and a change of clothes for Mila, Grant sat on the edge of the sofa. Mila looked at him with eyes bright with fever. "Are we going for a car ride?" she asked, trying to sound cheerful despite her obvious discomfort. "Yes, we are. To a place where nice doctors will help you feel better." Mila made a small face. "I don't like doctors. They have needles." Grant smiled, trying to reassure her. "But they also have colorful stickers and lollipops for brave kids." That coaxed a small smile from her, quickly followed by another coughing fit. Grant's heart sank. How could a child so full of life seem so fragile all of a sudden? Audrey returned with a small bag and Mila's coat. "We're ready." Grant lifted Mila into his arms, surprised by how light she was. The blanket wrapped around her seemed to swallow her whole. She rested her head on his shoulder, and Grant could feel the heat of the fever through his shirt. The walk to the car was silent, each lost in their own worries. Grant settled Mila in the back seat with Audrey beside her, holding her hand. Throughout the drive to the hospital, he watched in the rearview mirror as the mother whispered words of comfort to her daughter, stroking her hair, wiping sweat from her forehead. The pediatric hospital was modern and well-equipped. Grant knew the medical director. They had been in college together before taking different paths. While Audrey filled out forms at the reception, Grant made a few calls. In less than 15 minutes, Mila was being seen by a pediatrician specializing in respiratory diseases. The diagnosis came quickly. A severe bacterial tonsillitis that could become more serious if not treated properly. The doctor prescribed antibiotics, stronger fever reducers, and recommended constant observation for the next 48 hours. Grant watched from a distance as Audrey held Mila's hand during the first dose of intravenous medication. The girl was scared but trying to be brave. Audrey, for her part, maintained a comforting smile, though Grant could see the fear in her eyes. When the nurse finally placed the colorful sticker on Mila's arm, as promised, the girl looked at Grant with a small smile of triumph, despite the pain and exhaustion. At that moment, sitting in a hospital waiting room, watching a mother and daughter face another challenge together, Grant realized how much his life had changed in such a short time. A few weeks ago, he would have been in his office, worried about numbers, contracts, and deadlines. Now nothing seemed more important than seeing the sparkle return to the eyes of a little girl who had unintentionally found her way into his heart. The 3 days following Mila's admission to the hospital were intense. Grant took turns with Audrey at the hospital, allowing her to rest for a few hours while he stayed by the little girl's side. The tonsillitis had been more severe than initially thought, requiring potent antibiotics and constant monitoring. Grant cancelled meetings, delegated projects, and, for the first time in years, put his work second. Caroline, his assistant, was perplexed by her boss's change in behavior, but followed his instructions without question. On the morning of the 4th day, the doctor finally delivered the news they had been waiting for. Mila was out of danger and could go home. She would still need to rest and continue her medication, but the worst was over. "She's a fighter," the pediatrician commented as she signed the discharge papers. "She didn't even cry when we changed her IV line." Grant smiled, proud, as if he were the girl's father. "She's the bravest kid I know." Audrey, who had slept only a few hours the night before, looked simultaneously relieved and exhausted. When Mila appeared in a hospital wheelchair, a standard protocol for discharge and even if the patient could walk, her little face was still pale, but the sparkle was gradually returning to her eyes. "Look, Mommy, I got a bear from Nurse Laura," she exclaimed, showing off a small teddy bear dressed as a doctor. Audrey knelt before her daughter, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "How lovely, my love. And have you named him?" Mila looked at the bear seriously, then at Grant, and then smiled. "Dr. Grant, because he helped me get better, just like Uncle Grant." Grant felt a lump in his throat. He cleared it to disguise his emotion and picked up the few bags with their belongings. "Shall we go home? I bet someone is tired of hospital food." "I want mac and cheese," Mila declared, already more cheerful. "And you shall have it," Audrey promised, kissing the top of her head. On the way to the apartment, Grant tried to broach a delicate subject he had been putting off, Audrey about the hospital expenses. "I'll pay for it," she interrupted firmly. "It may take time, but I'll pay back every penny. I can see if I can get a second job on weekends." Grant shook his head. That's not it. My company's health insurance covered everything. The only thing we need to buy are the medicines for her to continue at home." Audrey looked at him with surprise. "What do you mean? I don't have health insurance." "I know. But let's just say I know people. I managed to add Mila as a temporary dependent. It's a benefit we have for emergencies." It was a lie, of course. Grant had simply paid the hospital bill out of his own pocket, but he knew Audrey would never accept that. I don't know what to say," she murmured. "Don't say anything. The important thing is that Mila is well." When they arrived at the apartment, Grant helped settle Mila comfortably on the sofa, with Dr. Grant by her side and a small pile of children's books he had bought at the hospital bookstore. "I'll prepare something for her to eat," Audrey said, heading to the small kitchen. Grant followed her. "I can run to the market and get whatever you need." Audrey opened the nearly empty refrigerator and sighed. "I think that would be good." "I haven't had time to go shopping with all this happening." Grant made a mental list of what to buy. "I'll take care of it. And Audrey, you need to rest too. You look exhausted." She smiled faintly. "I'm fine. Mothers don't have the luxury of being exhausted." "At least sit down for a bit. I'll make some tea before I go." Surprisingly, she didn't protest. She sat at the small kitchen table while Grant prepared the tea. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable, but heavy with unsaid thoughts. "Thank you," she said finally, as he placed the steaming cup in front of her. "For everything." Grant just nodded. "I'll be back in an hour with the groceries." When he returned, carrying much more than the basics they had discussed, he found Audrey asleep on the sofa next to Mila. The girl put a finger to her lips, signaling for silence. "Mommy's tired," she whispered. She fell asleep in the middle of the story she was reading. Grant quietly put away the groceries and prepared the mac and cheese Mila had wanted so badly. When Audrey woke up about an hour later, she seemed disoriented for a few moments. "Did I fall asleep? What time is it?" "Almost 6, Grant replied, bringing a plate of pasta to Mila. "You needed to rest." "I have to work tomorrow," she said, rubbing her face. "I can't miss another day." "Mila still needs care," Grant noted. "I know," Audrey sighed. "I'll call Mrs. Beth, see if she's feeling better." The elderly woman was still sick, and Audrey looked increasingly worried. Grant could see the impossible dilemma in her eyes: be with her daughter or keep the job that ensured their livelihood. "I can stay with her," Grant offered. "I can work remotely tomorrow." Audrey hesitated. "I can't ask that of you." "You're not asking. I'm offering." After some more resistance, Audrey finally accepted. It was past 9 when Grant finally left the apartment, promising to return at 7 the next morning. On the way home, he thought about Audrey's situation. A single mother, working as a cleaner, with no support network, always on the edge between paying the bills and properly caring for her daughter. A reality he knew well from his own childhood. The next morning, as promised, Grant arrived at 7 sharp. Audrey was already ready to leave, wearing a simple grey uniform with the logo of a cleaning company. "Are you sure you'll be okay?" she asked for the 3rd time, adjusting her bag on her shoulder. "Mila is still weak. The medicines are all laid out on the table with the times written down." "We'll be fine," Grant assured her. "I brought my laptop. I can work while she rests, and I promise to call if there are any problems." Audrey kissed her daughter's forehead, who was still asleep, and hurried out so as not to miss the bus. The day passed peacefully. Mila slept a lot, and when she was awake, she was happy to draw or listen to stories that Grant read to her. Between one work call and another, he was surprised at how much he was enjoying the simple task of caring for a convalescing child. By 6 in the evening, Mila was visibly better, with more color in her cheeks and enough energy to chat excitedly about her drawings. Audrey had called twice to check on them, and Grant had reassured her that everything was fine. "Are you staying for dinner, Uncle Grant?" Mila asked, as she drew what looked like a family of 3 in front of a house. "Not tonight, little one. I have to go back to the office tomorrow. I have some important meetings." "You work a lot," she observed, without looking up from her drawing. "Mommy does too," Grant smiled. "Yes, your mum works very hard. She's a very strong woman." "I know," Mila agreed, coloring what appeared to be a dress on the female figure in the drawing. "When I grow up, I want to be strong like her." Audrey arrived around 7, looking exhausted but relieved to see her daughter clearly better. After a brief chat about how the day had been, Grant said goodbye, promising to call the next day to see how Mila was doing. The next morning, Grant returned to the office after nearly a week's absence. Caroline greeted him with a folder of urgent documents and a list of calls to return. "The board is anxious for the quarterly report," she informed him, following him down the hall, "and the development team needs approval for the new project." Grant nodded, absorbing the information as he walked. He was so focused that he almost didn't notice the figure kneeling in the main lobby, cleaning the marble floor. It was a glimpse of the grey uniform that caught his attention. Grant slowed his pace, looked more closely, and then stopped completely, stunned. Audrey was there, on her knees, scrubbing the floor. She wore yellow gloves and had her hair pulled back in a simple bun under a cap, with the same logo he'd seen on her uniform the day before. She didn't notice him, focused on removing a particularly stubborn stain. "Mr. Whitaker, is everything all right?" Caroline asked, noticing his expression. "Yes," he replied, without taking his eyes off Audrey. "You can go ahead. I'll meet you in the office in a few minutes." When his assistant walked away, Grant approached Audrey. She remained so absorbed in her task that she only noticed his presence when he stopped directly in front of her. As she looked up and recognized him, her face went through several emotions in quick succession: surprise, embarrassment, resignation. "Grant," she murmured, quickly standing up and removing her gloves. "You work here," he said, not as a question, but as a statement. Audrey looked away. "On Mondays and Tuesdays. It's one of my regular spots." Grant tried to process the information. How long had Audrey been cleaning the hallways of the building where he spent hours every day? How many times had they been in the same space without him ever noticing her? "Why did you never tell me you worked here?" he finally asked. Audrey shrugged, a gesture that tried to seem casual but couldn't hide her discomfort. "I'm used to it. Cleaners are invisible. No one really sees us." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. How many Audreys had he walked past over the years without truly seeing? How many people worked in the same spaces as him, keeping everything running without ever being noticed or valued? "Is Mila better?" she asked, clearly trying to change the subject. Yes, I imagine so," Grant replied, still processing the revelation. "You should be at home with her." "I can't miss any more work days," Audrey explained. "I was already out too much because of the hospital stay." One of the building supervisors walked by, casting a curious glance at the interaction between the executive and the cleaner. "I have to get back to work," Audrey said, putting her gloves back on. "I have to finish this floor before noon." Grant nodded, still stunned. "We'll talk later." As he headed to the elevator, his mind was racing. Audrey cleaned the hallways, the bathrooms, the conference rooms where he spent hours discussing multi-million-dollar investments. She likely earned a minimum wage to keep the environment clean, where executives like him decided the fate of fortunes. In the elevator, he pressed the button for the floor where the Human Resources Department was located. Before going to his office, he needed to check something. 2 hours later, after a tense meeting with the head of HR and a few calls to the legal department, Grant finally had a plan. It wouldn't be easy and would certainly raise eyebrows, but he was determined. He called the third-party company that managed the building's cleaning services. After identifying himself as the CEO, the call was quickly transferred to the director. "Mr. Espinoza, I need a favor. One of your employees, Audrey Collins, should not return to work tomorrow. I will speak with her personally about this." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Mr. Whitaker, if there's a problem with her service—" "On the contrary, I am very satisfied, so satisfied that I'm hiring her directly for our company. The details will be formalized by the end of the week." The next morning, Grant arrived at the office earlier than usual. He asked Caroline to call Audrey and request that she come to his office as soon as she arrived at the building. "She's not one of our employees," Caroline noted, confused. "Just make the call, please," Grant replied, offering no further explanation. At 9 o'clock sharp, there was a hesitant knock on the door. Caroline announced Audrey, one who entered the office with visible apprehension. She still wore the cleaning company's uniform, but seemed to have made an effort to look more presentable, with her hair neatly combed and tied back. "Good morning, Audrey," Grant greeted, standing to welcome her. "Please, have a seat," she complied, clearly uncomfortable in the spacious office with a view of the city. Her eyes quickly scanned the luxurious surroundings before settling on Grant. "Did something happen? Is it about Mila?" "No, don't worry. Mila is fine, I hope," he replied, sitting not behind his desk, but in the chair next to her. "I wanted to talk about you, actually." Audrey frowned, confused. "About me?" Grant nodded, choosing his next words carefully. "Yesterday, after finding out you work here, I did some research. I discovered you earn little more than minimum wage to clean 3 entire floors of this building, without proper benefits, no health insurance, no job security." Audrey looked away, embarrassed. "It's what I could find. I don't have many qualifications. I also discovered," he continued, "that you graduated high school with excellent grades, despite all the difficulties, and that you took a technical course as an administrative assistant, though you never got to work in the field." Her eyes widened slightly. How do you know that?" "I have my resources," Grant replied with a small smile. "The point is, I know you do everything for your daughter. I know this salary isn't fair for someone who works as hard as you do, and—" He paused, searching for the right words. "I've grown very fond of your company. You deserve more." Audrey stared at him, suspicious. "What are you saying exactly?" Grant opened a folder on the table and took out an envelope. "I'm offering you a job. At our company, not as a cleaner, but as an administrative assistant in the social responsibility department." He handed her the envelope. With trembling hands, Audrey opened it and took out the official letter with the company's letterhead. Her eyes scanned the document, stopping abruptly when she saw the offered salary, more than 3 times what she currently earned. This can't be right," she murmured, looking from the paper to Grant. "There must be some mistake." "There's no mistake," he assured her. "It also includes full health insurance for you and Mila, meal vouchers, transportation allowance, and flexible hours so you can be there when your daughter needs you." Audrey continued to stare at the document, as if afraid it would disappear at any moment. "Why?" she asked finally, her voice almost a whisper. "Why would you do this for me?" Grant hesitated, searching for the most honest answer. "Because you deserve a fair chance, because Mila deserves to see her mother fulfilled and valued, and because, in a way I can't fully explain, you two brought something back into my life, something I didn't even know was missing." Audrey's eyes filled with tears. She tried to hold them back, blinking rapidly, but it was a losing battle. A tear ran down her cheek, followed by another and another. "I don't know what to say," she murmured, her voice choked with emotion. "Say you accept," Grant replied softly. "Say you'll give yourself and Mila the life you deserve." Audrey looked at the letter in her hands again, then at Grant. There was so much gratitude in her eyes that he felt his own heart tighten. "I accept," she said finally, the tears now flowing freely. "Thank you. I promise you won't regret this." Grant smiled, feeling a satisfaction that no multi-million-dollar deal had ever given him. "I'm sure I won't." As he watched Audrey reread the details of the contract, now with a smile through her tears, Grant realized he was witnessing not just a change in her life, but in his own as well. Somehow, in trying to help Mila and Audrey, he had found something that money and success could never buy: a genuine purpose. The weeks following Audrey's hiring brought rapid and significant changes. Her first day as an administrative assistant in the social responsibility department was marked by nervousness and insecurity. Grant personally introduced her to the team, making it clear that he had full confidence in her abilities. Although some curious glances followed the newcomer who had appeared out of nowhere, Audrey's professionalism and dedication soon earned the respect of her colleagues. In the beginning, she called Grant several times a day with questions about procedures and systems. Gradually, the calls lessened. In just 2 weeks, Audrey was navigating with surprising ease the spreadsheets, reports, and meetings that made up her new routine. "She has a natural talent for organization," commented Helena, the department director, over coffee with Grant. "And she's brought a different perspective to our social projects. I think this was one of your best hires." Grant just smiled, satisfied. He didn't reveal to anyone the real reason behind hiring Audrey, nor how he had met her. To the company, she was just a promising professional he had discovered and decided to give a chance. The changes in Audrey and Mila's lives soon became apparent. With the new salary, they moved to a better apartment, still in the same neighborhood, but with 2 bedrooms and a small balcony. It wasn't luxurious, but it was airy, safe, and spacious enough for the 2 of them. The first paycheck also allowed Audrey to buy a new bed for Mila and finally get rid of the mattress on the floor where she had slept for years. The pantry, once often empty, was now always stocked. Mila no longer had to worry about not having a snack or about days when there was no food at home. The refrigerator, colorful with children's stickers, held fresh fruit, yogurt, and juice, small luxuries that were once special rarities. Grant remained a part of their lives, though in a different way now. He no longer needed to meet Mila at the school gate every day, as Audrey had flexible hours to pick up her daughter. But whenever possible, he would stop by for a quick visit, a walk in the park on Saturdays, or an ice cream after the swimming lessons Mila now attended. On a sunny Thursday, Grant decided to surprise them. He left the office early and drove to Mila's school. He positioned himself discreetly near the gate, watching the children leave. When Mila appeared, wearing the new uniform he had given her months ago, now with small signs of wear. Her face lit up when she saw him. "Uncle Grant!" she exclaimed, running toward him with the same energy as always. "You came to pick me up." He knelt to receive the little girl's impetuous hug. "I thought I'd surprise you. Your mom said I could take you for a hot chocolate before heading home." Mila jumped for joy. "Yay, can I have a cookie too?" "Of course you can," Grant laughed. "But first, let's wait for Miss Sandra to see that I'm picking you up." After the teacher confirmed that Grant was authorized to pick up Mila, Audrey had added his name to the list of guardians weeks ago, they headed to a small nearby coffee shop. Sitting at a table by the window, Mila savored her hot chocolate and chocolate chip cookie while excitedly recounting her day at school. "And the teacher said my drawing was the best in the class," she concluded proudly, wiping a chocolate mustache with a napkin. "Oh, that reminds me." Mila opened her new backpack. The one Grant had given her no longer fit, replaced by one with a superhero theme that Audrey had bought last month, and took out a colorful envelope, decorated with stickers and glitter. "I made this for you," she said, handing him the envelope with a shy smile. Grant took the envelope, surprised and curious. "For me? Is it a present?" Mila nodded, watching intently as he carefully opened it so as not to tear the decorations. Inside was a drawing made with colorful markers and great care. It showed 3 figures holding hands, a tall one in a suit, clearly Grant, a smaller one with long hair, Audrey, and a tiny one between them with pigtails, Mila. Above them, a smiling sun, and in the background, what looked like the office building where Grant and Audrey worked. But what really captured Grant's attention was the phrase written in irregular, colorful letters at the top of the drawing. "My best friend." Grant felt something tighten in his chest. He stared at the drawing for long seconds, unable to speak. "You don't like it?" Mila asked, her voice suddenly worried. "No, sweetie," he replied quickly, his voice slightly choked. "I love it. It's the most beautiful gift I've ever received." "Really?" Her eyes widened. "Prettier than a car?" Grant laughed, discreetly wiping the corner of his eye. "Much prettier than any car." Mila smiled, satisfied. "A mommy helped me with the letters, but I did the drawing all by myself. See how I drew us holding hands, like when we go to the park?" "I see," Grant replied, looking at the drawing again. "It's perfect, Mila." She took another bite of her cookie, thoughtful. "You know, I used to want you to be my dad, on the day of the party, remember? But now I think it's better that you're my best friend." Grant's heart raced with the sincerity of her observation. "Why?" he asked, genuinely curious. Mila shrugged, with the simplicity of children. "Because you only have one dad. A best friend can be forever, even if you and Mommy get into a fight one day." The unexpected wisdom of this little being left him speechless. Grant just nodded, reaching out to hold her hand across the table. "I will be your best friend forever, Mila, I promise." When they finished their snack, they walked hand in hand to the car. Grant felt the small grip of Mila's fingers in his, confident and natural, as if it had always been this way. The drawing was carefully tucked into his work briefcase. He already knew exactly where he would put it, framed on his desk at the office. "Uncle Grant," Mila called as he fastened her seatbelt. "You're coming for dinner tomorrow, right? Mommy said she's making lasagna, your favorite." "I wouldn't miss it for the world," he assured her, smiling. The next evening, Grant arrived at Audrey and Mila's new apartment carrying a bottle of special grape juice to toast with Mila and a small pot of violets for the table. The aroma of lasagna filled the air, mingling with the smell of garlic bread in the oven. "Welcome," exclaimed Mila, opening the door before he could even knock. She wore a small apron over her dress, obviously wanting to help her mother in the kitchen. The apartment, though simple, was transformed. New curtains adorned the windows, small plants brought life to the corners, and recent photographs, many including Grant, decorated the walls. It was a home in the truest sense of the word, welcoming, personal, full of life. Audrey appeared at the kitchen door, drying her hands on a dish towel. She wore a simple but pretty dress and had her hair down, a rare sight in the first few months he had known her. "Right on time," she smiled. "The lasagna just came out of the oven." The table was set with care. There was no fine china or silver cutlery, but every detail showed thoughtfulness. Folded napkins, aligned glasses, even a small flower arrangement in the center. "I helped set the table," Mila announced proudly. "And I made the name cards." Indeed, at each place was a small colored card with names written in Mila's childish handwriting. Mommy, Mila, and Uncle Grant, the last one decorated with little stars. "It's perfect," Grant praised, placing the violets in the center of the table. Audrey smiled, a different smile from their first encounters. There was a serenity about her now, a quiet confidence that made her even more beautiful. "I hope you like the lasagna," she said, serving the plates. "I followed my grandmother's recipe." The dinner proceeded with the naturalness of a family sharing not just a meal, but the stories of their day. Audrey talked about a new project at work. Grant commented on a comical meeting with investors, and Mila kept them entertained with elaborate tales of her adventures during school recess. And then Zoe said we could be astronaut princesses, but I said I wanted to be a dinosaur scientist, so we decided we would be princess scientists who study dinosaurs in space. The adults laughed at the impeccable logic of a child's imagination. Grant observed how Audrey seemed more relaxed, more confident. The chronic fatigue that had marked her face in their first meetings had given way to a renewed energy. She smiled more, laughed more openly. "I never imagined I would work on social projects," Audrey commented as she served dessert, a pudding that Mila proudly announced she had helped make. "But it's so rewarding to see how we can positively impact people's lives." "You've brought a valuable perspective to the team," Grant replied. "Helena told me your ideas for the public school project were revolutionary." Audrey blushed slightly at the compliment. "I just suggested things that would have made a difference in my own experience." "That's exactly why they're so good," Grant insisted. "You know the real needs, not just theories." After dinner, they settled in the small living room. Mila insisted on showing Grant her new board game, an early birthday present from a school friend. The three of them sat on the rug, with Mila explaining the rules in a confusing but enthusiastic manner. "No, Mommy, you can only draw a blue card if you roll an even number." Audrey feigned outrage, making her daughter laugh. "But yesterday you said it was with an odd number." "I changed the rules today," Mila explained seriously, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. As they played, following the fluid rules that Mila altered in her favor whenever convenient, Grant felt a strange sense of belonging. There, sitting on the rug of a modest living room, with a 5-year-old girl dictating the rules and a single mother watching affectionately, he felt more at home than he ever had in his luxurious apartment. "Your turn, Uncle Grant," Mila exclaimed, pushing the dice toward him. As he rolled the dice and moved his piece according to Mila's excited instructions, Grant observed the smiling faces around him. Mila's crystal-clear laugh when he landed on a bad luck space. Audrey's soft smile as she watched them, the natural way they shared that moment. Later, when Mila finally fell asleep after demanding 3 bedtime stories, one read by Audrey, one by Grant, and one improvised by both of them together, the adults sat on the small balcony, enjoying the quiet evening. "Thank you," Audrey said softly, breaking the comfortable silence. "Not just for the job, but for everything. For making Mila so happy." Grant shook his head. "I should be thanking you. You two brought something into my life that I didn't even know was missing." For the first time in a long time, perhaps for the first time in his adult life, Grant felt he was part of something real. It wasn't professional success. It wasn't material achievements, but this simple, genuine connection that brought him a happiness he didn't know he could feel. As he watched Audrey in the soft light of the balcony, with the distant sounds of the city in the background, and Mila's drawing still fresh in his memory, he realized a truth that had been slowly forming in his heart. He had finally found his place, here, in this family that fate had placed in his path through the unexpected request of a brave child. And that place was worth more than all the empires he had ever built. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.